I bought a house with a 3% down payment. And because of that, I now have to pay something called a PMI. And I was wondering if you have any tips to help me get rid of that PMI without me necessarily having to pay extra towards the mortgage. That's a very common concern we get here in the channel, and today we're going to answer that. Now, what I'm about to share today will work for any down payment below 20%, okay? It doesn't matter if you put down 3%, 4%, 5%, 10%. Whatever I'm about to share with you will work in any of those cases. So first things first, let's level the playing field. So let's say you have this house, right? You bought a house, you use a mortgage, and let's break down what a mortgage is, right? Because we have people tuning in from all kinds of different levels. So a mortgage is composed of your principal, right? Which is the debt, the money that you owe back to the bank, interest. And then you also have something called escrow. And the escrow is composed of insurance. That's the insurance for your home, right? Your home insurance and property taxes, right? But for anyone who gave a down payment under 20% has to pay something called a PMI, which stands for private mortgage insurance, right? So assuming our original example of 3%, right? So normally this is what you have. You pay down 3% and this is your down payment. Then from here to here is the 20%, which lenders typically look for. And then this is the mortgage, right? So mortgage. So as you can see, from this 3% to that 20% that you see over here, there's a difference of 17%, right? So this 17% needs to be covered by something, right? Because it's too risky to just give 3%. And banks don't like that. So in order to protect the difference of that 17%, the bank makes it a requirement for families to buy a private mortgage insurance. And this is separate from the actual home insurance that you see here. And the problem that I stated at the beginning of this episode is that a lot of people are looking to get rid of the PMI. For those who have a PMI, they want to get rid of it without necessarily having to pay extra towards the mortgage, because one of the solutions to get rid of this PMI is by making extra mortgage payments, right? Because the analogy of making extra mortgage payments is that it will help you build additional equity. The way it works is that if you put a down payment, that down payment amount is viewed as your equity. So in this example, we talked about a down payment of 3%. So that 3% will be part of your equity. And as you pay more and more towards your mortgage, you build additional equity. It could go up to 10% and then eventually 20%. And then once you hit that 20%, you will be able to come in and eliminate that PMI. But this episode is not about making additional payments. It's about how you can get rid of this annoying PMI and be able to reduce your mortgage payments in order to have a lower mortgage payment. So one way to do that, right, without having to pay extra is by increasing the equity in your property. How can you do that? Well, let's say you bought your house a couple of years ago at $200,000 and you fixed it up, you made it look nice and all of that stuff. You also paid down on the mortgage, and then eventually that house went up in equity, and let's say it's now worth at $300,000. So when you take $300,000 and then you minus it to $200,000, that means you have an additional equity of $100,000. So when you have an equity of $100,000, that means you have already built up more equity, which exceeded that original 20%, because that original 20% was supposed to be $40,000. But because you now have an equity of $100,000, that means that you have exceeded that. And that's how you can actually eliminate this annoying PMI. But there's an extra step that you can do, right? So you renovate the property, you make it nice, you make it beautiful. Now you need to refinance a mortgage in order to prove that your property has gone up in value, and therefore you already have the equity and you don't need to continue to pay for that PMI anymore. And you can do that through a refinance. And my favorite is to use a cash out refi or a cash out refinance because that will allow me to not only refinance the property and get rid of that PMI, but will also allow me to pull that equity out in order to buy more properties. And that's how you can get rid of the PMI. Now, I know that out of this tip, some additional questions could arise, and that is, how am I going to get the money to renovate the property and build up the equity? Well, it's simple. You can go to Home Depot and apply to 0% credit cards and buy the building materials and do that renovation. You can also use your own personal credit cards at 0%, and you can use that to buy the materials to do the renovation. Or you can work with services like Fund and Grow, who can help you get up to $250,000 in 0% credit cards, and you can use that money to renovate your house or to possibly even buy more real estate. If you want to learn more about how their service work, here is a video that you can actually check out, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.